Welcome to the cave. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Exciting times, man. You've been busy, man. I was doing some research on you, man. You got 901 Lone Star, you got the band. From what I've been reading the last few years, man, your career's been going up.
Yeah, it's been a wild few years. I think since the show came into my life, which was 2019. It just sort of hasn't stopped, and it's been a bit of a rocket ship.
Right. It's not a bad thing though.
No, it's an incredible thing. It's interesting because the first year of Lone Star was very much during the normal world time,
Yeah.
and then as soon as the show ended, COVID happened. So a lot of, actually, the majority of Lone Star, the experience has been during COVID. So it's been very strange because, especially shooting the show, most of the show we've been shooting under COVID circumstances and COVID protocols. So we've only truly had one normal season, which I find pretty, unfortunate and frustrating because, just something as simple as crew members always have to have their masks on. And you can't see people's
Right.
faces, and it's not the same way of connecting and communicating. But we've made it work, and everything's easing now. But yeah, man, it's been pretty surreal. And then once music started coming around, which we started dabbling in 2020. I
Mm,
think just like everybody else, we were sort of stuck and bored and not really knowing, what to do, especially on the creative sort of side of things. And my best friend John has always played music, and I remember I came over one day and he had some sort of riff laid out, and I was like, "Hey, I've never done this before, but I feel like I might be able to lay down some vocals for this." And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And that's literally how it started.
wow.
From that moment on, we just kept messing around. And I remember uh, at the very end of 2020, when I moved into this house currently, it was completely empty. It was actually kind of gutted. There was like bare walls everywhere, and it was pretty gnarly looking. And we wrote "Open Door" in my living room,
Mm,
um, on this like little janky like ironing board. He set up his entire system, and I had a microphone on the fireplace mantle, and, and we wrote "Open Door" that night. And it was very strange, but it was a magical moment because we were like, I remember we looked at each other and we are like, I think that's our first song. And now "Open Door," has become actually a really successful song, and we just celebrated our first birthday of "Open Door" yesterday. So yeah, it's been a surreal ride, and now here we are, season 4. It's crazy, man. It's crazy.
bless. We're gonna jump into season 4 in a little bit. So I was like doing some research on you also. Like, what made you get into the industry? I saw that, like, like growing up in Staten Island.
Mhm.
Was it your dad was a dentist or anything, right? How did like that happen? Like, you decided you wanted to get to the entertainment industry. He didn't try to push you into medical field or anything.
Oh, he definitely did. I mean, he definitely did. His wish was, for both of his kids to be, dentist or in the dental field. And I remember I assisted him one summer, and as soon as I saw, I think we were doing a root canal. Right? As soon as I saw a pool of blood in this person's mouth, I looked at my dad and I said, "I am not going to be a dentist. I am sorry." And I just remember shattering all of his dreams. And I think that was just just it was not a happy moment for him. Um, and The way I got into acting was, it kind of found me in a weird way, and it kind of in many ways saved me, as cliche as that sounds. In high school, I was hanging around with the wrong kids, you know, getting into fights, skipping school, doing drugs, smoking weed, um, drinking a lot, which is so crazy to think about looking back on it now. Because we were so young, man. We were like 16, 17 years old. Um, and just really not doing well and physically not looking well. And I think um, teachers started to notice, and it was a guidance counselor of mine that um, brought me into her office, and she's like, "Hey, I'm not gonna get into details, but like people are noticing that something's going on with you, and you're not this like spry young, um, happy-go-lucky, bright-eyed boy anymore that we knew freshman year." And she's like, "Would you be interested in maybe getting involved with the theater program? We think it might be good for you." Because after school, instead of going and getting into trouble, hanging around with the wrong kids, you can stay and work with the theater program, work on scenes, and work until late. And you'll have people that will hold you accountable, and you'll learn a new discipline and you learn a new craft, and it could be good for you. And I was like, it sounds kind of lame, but I guess I like acting because I love movies. I've always loved movies. I could definitely say that. And I think for me it was like, yeah, sure, whatever. So I did it, and I was able to audition for the lead role in the play that year, and I got it. And I just remember rehearsals and connecting with kids, and doing something creative was just something that I guess I've always needed. And I've always been creative as a kid, but it's just like in high school that sort of took a back seat because of, other things. And I remember stepping out on the very first night of our first show and just hearing the crowd react, and the bright lights, and getting through an entire performance. I just remember falling in love with it and feeling that rush was so almost euphoric, and I just I needed it. I needed it again, and it was I sort of caught the bug immediately, and from that moment on, I was like, I'm gonna put all the bullshit to the side. I'm gonna clean my act up physically and mentally, and I started that summer, junior year into senior year. I started pursuing, acting classes, and found this program in Manhattan where at the end of the program, you get an opportunity to meet major managers and agents. And I did that and found my very first manager, who I'm not with anymore, but they were my very first management. And that summer, signed with the manager, auditioned for a movie called It Felt Like Love. And then before I knew it, by the time I graduated high school, It Felt Like Love went to Sundance.
Wow.
So as soon as I got out of high school, I flew over to Sundance as the male lead of a film that no one thought was going to make anything or do anything. And it ended up being this Sundance smash hit and this film festival smash hit. So I was immediately thrown into the industry, whether I wanted to or not. And I think Sundance was really the biggest wake up call I've ever had of my life and of my career. Of like, oh shit, this is so official, and you are in it now, whether you like it or not. And I'm surrounded by these A-listers on that main strip of Sundance. We're doing press tours. We have to go to all these social gatherings, and it's all these people that I grew up watching, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm here. Like, I don't know how I got here, but I'm here, and I couldn't do the stuff I did anymore, because I was very much in the business. And I think that's when I realized this is very much a business as well as a artistic endeavor. And from that moment on, I just took it completely seriously and sort of just kept my head down and just started grinding. And one thing led to another. And my manager currently, Warren Siegel, he didn't even see the movie. He saw the trailer for Felt Like Love, and reached out. And he's a big manager in Los Angeles, and I was still in Staten Island. And I remember him reaching out and be like, I would love to represent you. I feel like there's a really bright future for you, and this movie looks really special, and it could be incredible. And 10 years later, we're still together, and we've been kicking ass ever since, man.
Amazing. You mentioned you love movies. I got to put you on the spot. What's your favorite movie of all time?
So, there's always like a three-parter. There's like Seven is always somewhere there.
Yeah.
Um, Fight Club is always somewhere there, and then there's just new movies that are always like, I think it's not new. I think Pulp Fiction is always in that mix.
Mm.
Um, you know, it's interesting. There's a movie recently, not recent, but it came out within the last 5 years. It's called Roma, and it was that black and white film by Alejandro Inarritu that came out on Netflix, and that might be one of the most extraordinary films of all time. And it had the big Oscar campaigning, but I remember it being one of those first movies that came out on Netflix and didn't have the proper theatrical release. And that's sort of where that conversation started. But it is one of the most extraordinary movies you will ever see. It's called Roma, Roma, and yeah. So I think those four are always there. And I think if I had to stick, I'm looking at my my office of acting stuff. I think I would have to throw in Moonlight into my top five.
Mm.
Because I've seen that movie probably 7 times just in theaters. Um, that movie's really, really hit me. I'm not sure why so deeply, but yeah, those top five are always sort of circulating.
Amazing. Now, Ronan, acting, musician, band and everything. What's next, man? Do you have like another like something you want to hit behind the scenes, right? What's on your bucket list?
Man, I think I was 16, I wrote a short film, and then by some miracle was able to shoot it when I was like 17.
Mm.
Yeah, I think I was 17 years old, or eight. No, I think I was 18 because I got the crew from a New Hampshire film festival that I met from touring. It felt like love. So I would have had to have been 18 or 19. But I remember writing it when I was 16 years old or 17 years old. Not sure what made me write this sort of script, but it was about the Vietnam War, and it was about
Right.
2 soldiers that came back after Vietnam. It was about this white soldier who I played and his best friend who was a black soldier, and sort of how sort of the public and the media treated Vietnam soldiers when they came back, and also the racial tensions in the country. So the fact that I wrote that when I was like 16, I'm not quite sure what was going on in my head, but it was pretty it's pretty gnarly that that's what I was thinking about. And I got a crew together and was able to shoot it, and actually premiered it at the film festival in New Hampshire.
Wow.
So that all happened, by the time I was 18. So I there's definitely a world where I would direct one day and
Mm.
write something. And I definitely have some ideas. There's definitely one. I think the biggest thing I would want to direct is sort of what I went through in that certain period of my life in high school.
Yeah.
Because there's some stories, man, that are just like hard to fathom. And the fact that I'm even still here and that a lot of my friends are even still here is a miracle. And I think, I think it would be very much like the movie Kids, but like a more modern depiction of that.
Yeah.
Because man, we went through some crazy shit, and I always tell my wife these stories, and she just has her mouth is just open, and she's just like, "What?" Because she comes from a completely different world. She comes from Canada, and they just didn't do that back then. And
Right.
I came from a rough part of Staten Island, and New York. It's just a different world, and I think sharing that story would be really important to me, and sort of really show people like this is where I came from, like the unfiltered version. And the fact that I'm here today is truly a miracle, and I'm forever grateful to that guidance counselor that was like, "Hey, you should probably try acting because your future is not very bright." So yeah, I think writing and directing would be very
Have
high.
Have you ever reached out to that guidance counselor and thanked him?
Yeah, I've seen her. Her name is Miss Coppola. I remember when my first TV show came out in 2016. It was called Dead of Summer. I actually went back to my high school and spent the whole day with the acting program.
Mm.
And yeah, just sort of talked to the kids and, sat with the kids and watched, some of their plays and just sort of gave back to, the teachers and the students and was like, this is where I started, and if I could do it, you guys could definitely do it. So that was really special to see her, and we hugged and we cried together, and they were so proud. And now, ever since Lone Star, I mean, I get messages from them, and they're just like, it's just hard to believe that this is where I am today, and they saw it firsthand. Like they know better than anybody. Like the fact that I went from that to this
Mm.
is extraordinary, and they're just beyond proud, and I'm just forever grateful for them. Because they truly changed my life.
Awesome. And now, of course, like you said, we see you as TK on Lone Star. Let's jump into that. We just had season 4 recently premiered a few weeks ago. And people are just like, I wrote down here, I wanted to say, like, they're, I don't know if the fans are like disappointed or upset about the way season 4, episode 1 came in.
I think I think it's just like last season. We know how to stir the pot. It's
Yeah.
last season we started off with TK and Carlos were broken up off screen, and the fans were not happy about that. However, when we started the progression of the season and we started showing the comeback of these two, the
Mm.
fans were very happy, and I think they were beyond happy about the season overall. So I think that's sort of what's going to happen this season is, Carlos drops this major bomb on me, and I think it's going to be worth it. That's all I could say is the journey of them figuring things out, and the journey of them, working through yet another hurdle is going to be worth it. And again, everything is leading to this
Mm.
massive wedding that everybody's waiting for, and I think they'll be very happy just with the next episode. It's a massive Tarlos episode. Episode 2, 3, and 4. So I think people will. I know they're a little frustrated now, but trust me, it is worth the wait. We also have 17 more episodes to go, so it's all part of the journey. It's a very stressful
Right.
show. These characters get thrown through all of the crazy shit, so they'll they'll be happy. Trust me.
Yeah. And from what I've read, the writers always had this plan since season 1.
Exactly. Yeah. So this was a perfect time to do it, and I didn't know that secret until we started shooting this season. And I think it's pretty amazing. I think it's amazing because, Tarlos is so beloved, but also like they have the most um, stressful and layered and up and down storylines of anybody on the show. And I think, that's a major part of why they're so beloved and why it's so interesting to watch their story unfold is because our showrunner and our brilliant writer Tim Minear keeps throwing these wrenches
Mm.
into our relationship, and it makes for great drama, because we can't just be steady and lovely the entire time, then
Right.
it would be a drama. It would be a sitcom, But
Yeah.
even sitcom has drama and has
Right, right.
heartbreak and stuff like that. So I think it's amazing, and it just makes the journey that much more interesting. And as an actor, it makes it so much more interesting because we get to play all these really difficult scenes and have these difficult conversations, and um, the ups and downs is what makes this relationship so interesting. And I think that's just for relationships in general. This is what happens in real life. We go
Right.
through ups and downs, and it's not always, you know, daisies and butterflies, and so
Yeah.
it'll be worth
You
it.
you mentioned journey. How would you describe TK's journey from season 1 now into season 4? Because he's changed a lot too.
I've been doing a lot of interviews for this new season, and I sort of had to sit down and I had to literally write down like everything TK has been through since season one, and it is pretty crazy. Like it was like a full page of stuff. I mean, from the moment we meet him, his engagement goes terribly wrong. He finds out he's been getting cheated on. He then overdoses, relapses,
Yeah.
and then on top of everything, his father is like, "All right, we're actually packing everything up and we're going to move to a completely different state." And moving to Texas from New York is a big difference. And then we have to start a new firehouse all over again. And then on top of everything, his father has cancer. So it's like that's within the first few episodes of TK's life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then all the other stuff that he goes through the last 4 seasons. I mean, it's really surreal. And obviously, losing his mom last season, that's got to be the biggest thing of all, and the fact that he is still somehow managing to stay strong and stay resilient. I think that's the word I would use for him. It's just true resilience. He is a strong, excuse my language, a strong motherfucker, like mentally and physically. And this TK's definitely gone through the most in this show, both mentally and physically. And this poor kid has been through it, you know what I mean? And he still
Mhm.
manages to have a smile on his face, be selfless, be loving, be caring, show up for other people, show up for strangers, show up for his friends and his family. Through it all, he still does it. And he's just truly a beautiful, um, very actually inspirational character. I think a lot of people could take from TK of, no matter how many times you fall, you still manage to get up somehow.
Mhm.
He's a true sort of example of that. And it's been such a a blessing and a treat to play him. And I've been able to take a lot from him and use it into my own life. And his resilience is something that I admire tremendously. And I wish we all had a TK in our life because
Mhm.
he'd be a really great person to lean on when things aren't going well, and just beyond grateful to be, a part of this journey with him.
Did you find like any challenges playing this character? Because you mentioned that, like, for your personal life, you went through some stuff when you were younger, and and now TK is pretty much going through stuff like that. Any challenges playing this character?
I mean, when I first read the script, the very first script, I had to call Tim and was like, "Man, I just want you to know that like I went through opioids when I was younger, and like the fact that TK that was his problem, like this is really fucking strange." And um, weirdly enough, it wasn't traumatic. I think it was more cathartic and therapeutic to play that. Um, and I was able to bring sort of my own experiences into that, and uh, and this is like really dark and really, I don't know if I've ever shared this with anyone, but like, for example, in the very first episode, when Owen finds me on the floor with like, puke all over the place and I overdose, they initially wanted to have the pills on the table just sort of sprawled over. And I went over to our director and I was like, I'm going to be completely honest with you. Somebody that is truly using opioids and is trying to, get bombed the way we used to do it, I said, these pills would be crushed up and he would actually be sniffing them instead of
Mm.
ingesting them. Because unfortunately, that's what we did. And that's what a lot of kids are doing to this day. I mean, the opioid crisis is out of control, especially still to this day in Staten Island. And that's definitely something that I want to tackle one day in my life and in my career. Um, and I told them, I was like, these pills would be crushed and they would be all over the table and it would be messy and they wouldn't be neatly placed like a TV show. So, like little things like that, the fact that I was able to share that experience was really gnarly. And again, I think therapeutic in a way of sort of handling my own demons from that time.
Mm.
And yeah, it was, and I'm just so proud that TK is on this journey of sobriety I'm personally not sober, but I haven't touched that shit since high school. So, um, but it's been really beautiful to see his journey sort of being sober, and again, that's a major battle that I think is not talked about enough. Of he is going through this battle every single day, whether we show scenes of him, in AA or not. This is
Yeah.
something that addicts go through every single day. So the fact that yet another layer to put on top of TK's journey,
Mm.
it's just extraordinary, man.
And you mentioned Rob Lowe plays your dad on the show.
Yeah.
Has there been any because a lot of people say that you look exactly like what his son would look like. Do you ever get that?
Yeah, I get it from pretty much every single person that comes on, as a guest star or recurring or something, and they're like, "Oh my God, you could be his son." And it's even weirder because if you combine Rob and Lisa Edelstein, then I really look
Yeah.
like their kid. And I remember everybody saying this is the greatest child casting of all time. Like, this is definitely what their kid would look like. So yeah, it's just it's amazing how that happens sometimes. And there's definitely some photos I've seen of younger Rob, especially there. It's really interesting. We have in the Strand house where I used to live with him. We have kid photos of us, and
Right.
there's these two photos where you almost couldn't tell who's who when we were young, like kids
Wow.
under 8 years old. And it's just so we even had like the same bowl cut and had like the gap teeth, and it's just it was meant to be. You know what I mean? It's I just remember the entire casting process, and when Tim and Ryan Murphy were casting me, they knew immediately I was the guy. Like, they didn't even look at anybody else. So I think sometimes when it just is meant to be, it is. And it's it's incredible.
Mm. And you mentioned like working with the cast and everything else. So like we talk about uh Carlos, which is played by Raphael. Like, how do you like describe that chemistry with you? Because it seems like you guys are just it's like glue pretty much. You guys are good with your scenes.
Yeah, and I think that's a major part of why these characters have evolved so tremendously. I don't think I can't imagine you know Tim and Ryan ever expecting this like Tarlos explosion. I mean, the fact that there's literally like Tarlos is now like a household name.
Right.
It's pretty surreal, and I don't think they've ever expected it. Just the fact that Tarlos even became a word, and I think that truly happened from our chemistry read. You know, I was lucky enough to chemistry read with two people for the role of Carlos. And when Raphael walked into the room, we knew immediately he was the guy. And then when we started doing our scene, it was just like, I mean, the room almost set on fire. You know what I mean? And we never met before. And, again, it's like when it's just meant to be, it just is. And I think Bob Marley said, "What is to be must be," and that's what I believe truly with this show. It's like from the moment we met, the chemistry was just there, and the connection was there, and I think it really inspired the writers to write these really really heavy, complex scenes for us and these storylines because we're talking about TK's journey. If you look at Tarlos's journey, I mean, holy shit, what they've been through as a couple,
Mhm.
and the evolution of Tarlos from season one to now this season. I mean, you just wait till you see what we're shooting now. I
Mm.
mean, the evolution of them as a couple is extraordinary. I mean, the fact that, in episode 2, season 1, I get a little spooked by him throwing this romantic dinner, and I tell him I'm not looking for anything serious, to now we're engaged
Right.
on our way to a wedding. Like, that's pretty extraordinary, and yeah, that I think that just happened immediately, and it really inspired the writers to dive really deep into these characters and give us, really difficult scenes, because I think we can handle them. And it's, for me, it's the most exhilarating stuff to do on the show. Um, it's the stuff with Carlos, the stuff with Owen. I think those two relationships for me are the most important.
Mm.
And it's kind of the heart and soul of the show, is Owen and TK, and TK and Carlos. I think it's it's crucial to the show, and it's just a beautiful part of it. And we're so lucky to have these heavy storylines, because they are in many ways the most fun to play as an actor.
Mm. You've also, like you said, like the scenes and everything. Also, like you not only you have the scenes with that stuff, but you also have like the wild like rescue scenes. Also, that's got to be a lot of like emotions going through some of those too.
And I think that's the beautiful part um, of our show, and I think that's why it works so well. Is I think initially people came for, initially obviously people came for, Rob Lowe, Liv Tyler,
Yeah.
and these massive rescues, and we have these massive stars on our show, obviously created by Ryan Murphy and Tim Minear. And they saw that we have these massive rescues and the craziest cases and stuff that you can never imagine would ever happen, you know. And then after we get through that, we realize that we have really deep layered characters and really deep emotional stuff on the show. And I think that's what people stick around for. I think initially people came for the action and the spectacle, but they
Yeah.
stay for the characters and the relationships. And I think that's what our show does so well, is balancing the two. And this season, yet again, we have frogs raining down on us, and baseball sized hail, and just weather phenomenons. And then again, we have the drama of my fiance is actually already married, and it's like
Right.
that's as impactful, I think, as the weather phenomenon, if not more. So they've really found the beautiful balance of, I guess, sort of the algorithm of what makes this show work, and they've done it tremendously well.
Amazing, amazing. And now you're still filming the season, right?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
very much so. We're only up to like episode 12. We're going to start
Okay.
episode 13 very soon. And, we have 18 episodes this season. So, man, we have so much going on this season. Episode 12 right now is definitely one of my favorite episodes this season. If not, probably a top 3 favorite episodes so far. And again, it's just like, you all roads are leading to this wedding that nobody knows how it's going to happen or where it's going to happen. We know it's going to happen, we just don't know how, and that's
Right.
really stressful and also exhilarating in a way, because for me it's going to be a surprise, just as much as for the audience and the fans.
It's amazing. Ronen, now what's next for you now? Any other projects you're allowed to tell us about that are coming out? I know you're going to be touring it with the band. Is that right? Sometime in March?
Well, no, I March will still be shooting the show, but
Okay.
we actually just wrote 2 new songs, so we have to record them properly in the studio with our producer. And then the plan is to release an EP this year,
Okay.
probably a 5-song EP. And then, man, if God willing, if there is some time this summer in between seasons, hopefully in between seasons, I would love to go on the road and play live, because everybody tells me, they're like, you think you love acting, wait till you get on a stage and perform music. I think that's going to change my world, to be honest. I hope I don't fall in love with it too much, and decide to sort of take a break from acting. But I definitely want to try to balance both as much as possible. And there's been actors that have been able to do it. I think one of the biggest inspirations for me is Donald Glover. The way he's able to go back and forth between acting and music. I think he's just a beautiful, perfect example of someone that could do both. And Childish Gambino is one of my favorite artists, and then him as an actor, Atlanta is one of my favorite shows. So the fact that he can do both has always been an inspiration for me. And you know, I hope to follow his footsteps. And yeah, you know, we're gonna try to play live as soon as we can. And I know the fans are just dying for more music, and trust me, we have so much more coming. And it's going to be a really extraordinary year, and it's only started, which is so crazy to
I
think.
mean, that's awesome. Roden, lastly, how can the listeners and the viewers find you on social media, keep up with you with the show, with the band, everything?
Yeah, I'm very much active on Instagram and Twitter. I actually quite enjoy it and love connecting with the fans, and it's just at Ronen Rubinstein. And you know, on Twitter, I'm very much a spoiler king, and on Instagram, you know, I'm very much you could just get a really great glimpse into my life, and I love sharing it with the fans and connecting with the fans. And yeah, thanks for having me, man.
That's awesome. Roden, thank you for coming on today. This was great.
Thank you so much, man.